We're doing Twitter's main character. Twitter's main character. I'm going to ask you to please do not participate in any, you know, crowd bashing. What am I trying to say?
Hey, guys.
My God. I'm not good at this. I have the worst words. You get the idea. All right. Matthew Chapman tweeting, hot take. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not only absolutely justified, but the fact that many people today think they weren't was a result of U.S. post-war propaganda downplaying the war crimes Japan committed so we could ally with them in the Korean War. You just downplayed war crimes. You just downplayed war crimes. That's what you just did. What the fuck? Can you believe this take? This is out of this world, man. Out of this world take. Reporter at Raw Story. So some real lib shit, huh? What the fuck, dude? What is that take? Japan's brutality in World War II was easily on par with anything the Nazis did. I don't know about those numbers, man. I don't know about those numbers, bro. Not that it's all about numbers, but check your math. But they were never really forced to reconstruct society in the same way, partially assuring the imperial family immunity. And the continuation of government was the only way they'd ever surrender. What the fuck? This is just all over the map here. I made a bookmark of this one here. From, hopefully a new champion to the stream soon. We're inviting them in to chat. Haley from theculture.tv. God damn it, I love this coffee. You know what I mean? Saying, you're ignorant. Which is just, honestly, sometimes all that you owe people on the internet. You're dumb. Today's the 75th... Wait, hold on. Is there more in this thread? All right. Today's the 75th anniversary. This is written August 6th, 2020. Today's the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima by the U.S. Unprecedented act of violence. Killed an estimated 100,000 people. Irrefutable historical evidence proves that the bombings were militarily unnecessary and morally reprehensible. Yeah, just bad all around. Bad all around. All right, let's just continue down the thread. Let's see if I can learn something new here. There were at least two ways to swiftly and peacefully ensure Japanese surrender, which the U.S. was aware of as early as July 44. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were intended not to last, intended maybe not to be the last acts of World War II, but rather the first acts of the Cold War. Oh, shit. Oh my God, that's actually it, right? That is a reframing there for you. I did not read this thread before we did this. In this thread, I'll be outlining in detail the journey to the American decision to use the bomb, the origins of the Manhattan Project, Truman's rise to power, behind-the-scenes deliberations from the U.S. and Japan, the Soviet Union's influence, and Japan's efforts for peace. Let's do this. Cannot state in clear terms that the use of nuclear weapons at Hiroshima and Nagasaki should never have happened, and that it is every leftist and moral being's duty to combat the historical revisionism that continues to excuse these atrocities. I think that's what we just read from Matt Chapman. In the midst of everything going on, it's easy to forget that we're closer now than ever before to using these weapons again. The bullet of atomic scientists' doomsday clock puts us at 100 seconds to midnight. The closest we've been since 53. Let's check this out. All right, so I don't know what it is now, right? Current is still at 100. Yoshi, please. Be quiet or be cute. Okay, you got a couple options here. Otherwise, your terrorizing will get you nowhere. Your muse will get you nowhere, Yoshi. He's good. Come here. Sit on my lap. Maybe you'll be happy if you sit on my lap. I know I won't. So let me, hold on. If I recross my legs now, I'll be set for a little while and you could sit. Come on. You'll be so happy if you sit on my lap. Did they adjust the doomsday clock recently? It reflected the same number. I don't know. Did they? I think they just, every now and then they just check to see that it's still working, you know? Okay. It's you know, get the dust off the arm. Okay. The sanitization of Hiroshima plays directly into the Second Cold War, currently underway between the U.S., Russia, and North Korea, and enabled Obama's $1.2 trillion modernization of the U.S. arsenal that Trump is now implementing. All right. So, again, to reflect on what I'm pulling from this thread, I'm like looking at this again, not as the ending of World War II, but I'm like reframing this as the first acts of the Cold War. This is like the U.S. saying, hey, we'll do some evil fucking shit as we, you know, as we, after World War II, isolate China and Russia, right? And like, wow, I honestly didn't sort of think about it like that, I guess. Of course. Okay. All right, let's continue reading. Did I read this? I did. The 9 nuclear states, we got sirens and everything. All types of distractions on my channel. The 9 nuclear states that are the U.S., Britain, China, Russia, India, Pakistan, France, North Korea, and Israel. There are approximately 13,000 nukes today. I honestly hate thinking about this. This is so deeply depressing. This is so fucking sad. Are you kidding me? Has anyone watched Dr. Strangelove? Like 13,000 nukes. What could go wrong? We're going to be how long from now are we going to be looking back at this and saying, what the fuck were we doing not getting rid of all of these as soon as possible? Down from 70,000 at the peak of the Cold War. Back then, the world's arsenal was equivalent to 1.7 million Hiroshima bombs. I'll tell you what, we don't need that. You know, we don't need that. No one needs that. Yeah. And they're all hundreds of times more powerful than the ones dropped in Japan. Fusion bombs. Thanks, Left Justified. Mike Boy Raps, welcome and happy 2 years. Thank you so much. First stream was 2 years ago. Oh, fucking awesome. Corvus, welcome in. How are you, buddy? Fucking gross. Absolutely. Brett, 17 months? Gosh. That is incredible. Hey, thank you so much for the 17 months, Brett. Love your face. Yeah. I mean, how many nukes does a guy need? Oh. It takes a good guy with a nuke to stop a bad guy with a nuke. Right? I don't even know. How are you, brother? Good to see you. Yeah, it's great to see you. Hope you're well. Folks, if you missed my chat with Corvus Ursa, with the Corvus... I'm sorry. Why I did that. With Corvus, with Xander Corvus. Corvus Ursa, someone else. My brain is doing me dirty over here. We had a great chat, and we talked about mutual aid, sexual worker mutual aid. That was great. Yeah, and good to see you. Hope you're well. Welcome in. I'm reading about the main character of the day. Today's main character of the day. Again, folks, everyone is oh, great, having a good time here. I keep hitting back because Matt Chapman said that the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were justified, but the fact that we think it's not justified is post-war propaganda. I just can't believe you can't believe what you're reading. So I'm getting back into this here. We're learning a little bit about World War II, etc. bombs. Here we are. All right. I'm just getting into this thread by Haley. I'm stoked. We've invited Haley on, but we'll see when we can get them on. It should be good. There used to be nukes just up the road in Northfield, Illinois. Great. What could go wrong? So this thread is going to be divided into sub-threads where I discuss each topic in detail. I'll start by outlining the historiography of the bomb and how the narratives shifted to continue to justify the bombings by warhawks and liberals alike 75 years on. All right. I'm going down a rabbit hole that I didn't prepare for, so we'll see where this goes. We'll just do what we want. Here we go. This section outlines popular historical narratives about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the overall popular view of the U.S. And U.S.'s role in World War II, how it was ended. From the outset, the narrative did not align with the scientific, political, or strategic facts. Whoa, this is like a real fucking thread over here. Do I need to go here? All right, we're in this thread. There are 3 historical narratives about Hiroshima and Nagasaki that emerge roughly in chronological order. The heroic narrative, the tragic narrative, and the apocalyptic narrative. This photo. We could watch someone else's video. I'm enjoying the thread. The heroic narrative touts that U.S. were the good guys in World War II, a good war, a war to defeat fascism. The atomic bombs were dropped to end the war hastily and spare land invasion, blockade, and continued strategic bombing, ultimately saving lives. We could augment it with the watching of the Sean video. Let's make sure that I get that link. According to U.S. intelligence in 1945, the highest estimate for land invasion of Japan was 46,000 casualties. Later in his life, Truman upped that number to 500,000 in his memoirs. Secretary of War Stimson claimed 1 million casualties were averted, i.e. around 250,000 dead. George H.W. Bush claimed the atomic bombings saved millions of American lives. Ew, dude. CIA, dude. Estimates have steadily risen over the years along with criticism. Japanese and other Asian casualties began to be grouped in the same manner that Nazis are grouped in as victims of communism. This is like the second or third time this has been brought up on my stream. And some people have done a count, right, of quote-unquote victims of communism, and they include Nazis into that, and they're playing a joke on you is what they're doing, dude. They're telling you you're not paying attention. If they, like, gin up your sympathy for that, they're honestly telling on you. They're getting you to tell on yourself, right? Gosh. Nazis are grouped in as victims of communism? I'm sorry, dude. Nope. And it's not how that works. Sorry. From the outset, the estimated lives saved by nuking Japan was deliberately overblown by those in power to overshadow the massive amount of life lost at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with the highest estimates at 210,000 people killed. Yeah, I'm a victim of capitalism. No one ever asked me. Same, Mike boy. All right, I don't know what I can show you here, so I might have to blur this. The tragic narrative asserts that atomic bombings were not necessary. Japan was already defeated and pursuing options for surrender, and with military targets wiped out by 1945, the primary victims were civilians, women, and children, and enslaved Koreans and Chinese. I'm going to blur this because there's, I believe, maybe some TOS, Twitch TOS. I can't tell, to be honest. Hey, Yoshi. All right, this narrative emerged in the late 60s and early 70s at the peak of the American anti-nuclear movement. Though most Americans today regard the bombings as a tragedy, this narrative was unsuccessful in challenging the establishment narrative that the bombings were unavoidable. Quiet Mercenary, welcome in. Happy 2 years. Thank you very much. You are all very nice to me today. Not have to stop being nice. Everyone keep being nice. I love it. The apocalyptic narrative asserts, hey, I can't show you blood on screen, but I could show you a nuke going off. The apocalyptic narrative asserts that dropping atomic bombs unnecessarily was not only a war crime, but sets a potentially omnicidal precedent. Truman knowingly began a process that could threaten the existence of all life on Earth. He claims he never lost a wink of sleep. Okay. Either that's like, what, like bravado? Like, I'm fine, I'm strong inside. I never cry. Or it's like, or he's lying. What other options, you know? Come on, dude. We want people second guessing whether or not you should have war crimed 200,000 people. She got the stern voice. She's screaming at me. She needs to be chill. Come here. Come here. Okay. I can't believe this. Streaming's so hard. We've been lucky to avoid another Hiroshima. In the past 75 years, there have been over 80 nuclear near misses in the form of communications blackouts, false intel, and standoffs like a Cuban Missile Crisis that, if cooler heads had not prevailed, could have ended life as we know it. 80 near misses? I've not heard about this. Oh, man. I knew there were some. There were 3 prevailing myths about World War II: that the U.S. won the war in Europe, that the Cold War started during World War II because of Soviet aggression, and that the atomic bombs ended the war and saved lives. Soyaddle, welcome in. Everyone follow Soyaddle. Oops. All right, in 45, 7 out of 8 5-star admirals and generals agreed that the bombs were militarily unnecessary or morally reprehensible. The 8th was MacArthur, who had no doubt that altered surrender terms would have ended the war. MacArthur would heavily advocate for nukes in the Korean War. These motherfucking people. MacArthur was a very, very bad dude. Yeah, Yoshi, come here. Psst, 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 psst. I'll give you attention, but you can't scream at me. Come here. It should be bulldozed, yeah. All right. According to the U.S. Navy Museum, the vast destruction reaped by the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki made little impact on the Japanese military. However, the Soviet invasion of Manchuria on August 9th changed their minds. All right. The invasion promised by Stalin at Yalta was the biggest factor in forcing Japan's hand. Hokkaido was in their sights, and above all, Japan feared losing their emperor to a communist takeover. I'll elaborate on this in another section of the thread. Truman and his advisors knew of other ways to end the war months sooner, but refused to do so. Why? Because the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were intended not as the last acts of World War II to defeat Japan, rather as the first acts of the Cold War to threaten the USSR. I've not been liking these. I'm not paying my respects to the thread. I can't show you this part. I don't even know what's in the picture. Yoshi, that's really annoying. Yeah, we talked about this. All right, that was one leg of the thread, right? Here. There she is. Oh my god, she's all over the place. Cool. Yeah. The memorial to the victims of communism should be bulldozed. Yeah. Replace it. Replace it with victims of communism. I'm sorry. Capitalism. What the fuck's wrong with my mouth? Twice you've betrayed me today, mouth. All right. I think with the coffee, my mouth's getting ahead of my brain. Or the opposite. Or both. Or neither. It's just not connecting anymore. Okay. Yellow leather. Yellow leather. Yellow leather. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Do you have like a thing to like warm up your mouth? Do you have a thing that you say? Do you have a thing? Chat, what's your thing? Rrr. Hey, yes, yes, no, no. I don't really do anything. I'm just joking. Okay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think that's true. Correct. Your beat is correct. Let's continue reading in the thread. From Haley, to understand the contested nature of the bomb among American leadership and its transition from a feared world-ending device to a necessary tool of moral crusade, we must start at the beginning. With the Manhattan Project. We're going all the way back, Yoshimi. I really hope this girl calms down. Meow! Stop. The Manhattan Project was first intended to be a deterrent against potential Nazi nukes. Oh. Oh, really? Keep this in mind. Because I think you know how this turns out, right? From the outset, doubt was cast about the potential danger of the bomb, and the precedent would be set outweighing any strategic advantage. All right, guys. Nazis, they might got nukes. What are we going to do? Well, Nazis are so bad, they might have nukes that we should get nukes. You have to be just as bad as the Nazi to understand the Nazi. Although technically the Nazis were looking at us, learning from the United States at the time, often saying that we were too brutal. So think about that. From the outset, doubt was cast about the potential danger of the bomb and precedent it would set outweighing any strategic advantage. Oh, wow. Get her out of here. She's so bad. That girl's so bad right now. Auf Deutschland. December 38th, the uranium atom is split. In January 39, Niels Bohr informs the U.S. that 2 German scientists had split the uranium atom, and the possibility of an atomic bomb began to be theorized. Whoa. That is like as epically scary as you would imagine. Is that where they split the atom? What is that, dude? Scary ass looking shit. This looks like a cartoon, right? All right, let's just draw a giant fucking bomb. It's huge. Gosh. European scientists who had fled Nazi Germany were terrified of the possibility of a Hitler nuke. Can you imagine that? Where would he drop it? Despite their warnings, American authorities doubted the Nazis were capable of making such a weapon. The Nazi nuclear program's almost a caricature and worth looking up. Oh. Later in 1939, 2 Hungarian scientists, Leo Szilard and Eugene Wigner, approached Albert Einstein to warn him. Einstein then wrote to Roosevelt, urging the U.S. to begin atomic bomb research as a potential deterrent against the Nazis. Roosevelt then authorized the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project. At the end of his life, Einstein cited the urging of Roosevelt to begin the bomb project as his greatest regret. Das ist mein greatest regret. Ich habe un Regret. Eins Entschuldigen Sie. Ich habe ein Regret. Not doing it? It's not doing anything for you? Alright, well, that's the stream. Stream's over. Stream's over. Say goodbye. These are the jokes. You did this to me. I'm out of here. I'm gone. I gotta go to church. It's Sunday, right? Fucking people. I was making content. I was in the middle of making content. Hey, you got to give me a break. All right? You're getting the goods over here. In late 41. In late 41, Robert Oppenheimer,
What the is Twitch?
father of the atomic bomb, joins the project. They began to theorize the detonation of H-bomb could potentially ignite all the oxygen in the atmosphere and incinerate the whole world. Really happy that didn't happen. Aren't you happy that didn't happen? Among the earliest doubt cast on the safety and morality of the atomic weapons, Oppenheimer called for an end to the project, saying, better to live in thraldom. Nope. In thraldom. Better to live in thraldom to the Nazis than to bring down the final curtain on mankind. I don't know, I've never heard that word before. We got Ambigubot in the house. Let's give Ambigubot a follow. Yeah. What's going on? All right. Later recalculated, the predicted chances of incinerating the atmosphere were about 3 in a million. The project was resumed, and on July 16th, 45, U.S. tested an 18-kiloton atomic bomb at the Trinity test in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Ugh. Thanks, I hate it. Do not want. Really disappointing. Again, first intended to be a deterrent against potential Nazi nukes. Doubt was cast, outweighing any strategic advantage. Moving on in the thread. Before we talk about Truman, it's essential to contrast him with the previous VP, Henry Wallace. One of the most radical and beloved politicians in U.S. history. His spot as VP was stolen from him in one of the least talked about coups of the 20th century. When I found out about how based Henry Wallace was and how he was done dirty, I was so fucking upset. It sort of felt like them doing Bernie dirty. What'd I just say? We're doing it live. Let's talk about Harry Truman. Complicated man. Through political conniving and sheer dumb luck, maneuvered his way from being a relentlessly bullied nobody in Missouri to the man who ousted the immensely popular VP Henry Wallace in 44. Ultimately became president, his biggest fear. How did he do it? I cannot remember how that went down. Was there some like reactionary shit going on there? There always is, right? Sup? Dan and chat, welcome in Lockwood Digital Designs. Good to be back with you. What does... Oh, you got a joke. Okay. Good to be with you today. I hope you're well. Henry Wallace was Roosevelt's VP from 41 to 45. Oh, I hope she tells us about this. Yeah, it's good to remember. I need to know what happened here. This is good shit. Henry Wallace was Roosevelt's VP from 41 to 45. Beloved progressive, outspoken anti-fascist. He's been largely wiped from historical memory. His father was Coolidge and Harding's Secretary of Agriculture, and Henry was also Secretary of Agriculture during the New Deal. Okay. Yeah. Look at him. He would have been a good-looking president, you know? You gotta know what happened here. They locked the doors to the convention center and held the vote with Wallace's people outside. They did him dirty. I knew they did some shit like that. He was a champion of civil rights, women's rights, and unions. That's based. He was a staunch opponent of British and French colonialism. Oh. Well, there it is. He probably would have gotten away with it if he just stuck to the civil rights, women's rights, and unions, to be honest. You start opposing colonialism, and they're like, uh-oh, hold on. They're like, you're calling out the problem a little bit too on point, you know? I wonder what happened there. He extremely popular with American people, an enemy to the Democratic establishment as well as Republicans. Who does this sound like? Who does this sound like to you? I agree. The guy with the boot on his head. This sounds exactly like him. They did him dirty. They didn't give him a shot. As VP, Wallace declared the 20th century to be the century of the common man, called for a worldwide people's revolution in the vein of the French and Russian revolutions. Global full employment, an end to poverty, and the proliferation of science and tech research. That's like really cool, right? I like those things. France and Britain went at Egypt pretty hard once. When specifically? I wonder what you're referring to. Eisenhower wasn't happy about it? Oh. What's the guy's name? Nasser? I keep forgetting that guy's name. The cool guy? The cool progressive dude from Egypt at the time? I say Nasser. That doesn't sound right. You never heard of this guy? I'm telling you. Stellar, you gotta know Wallace. It's just like... I wish I spent more time on the stream. That's why I'm doing this now. Wallace summarized his positions as nation first, Wall Street second. Okay. He labeled Wall Street America's fascists. That's true. Considering how radical he was, especially for his time, it's not hard to imagine why virtually no one knows about him, despite his popularity. It's hard to imagine. It's not hard. By 44, the establishment had had enough. At the DHC convention in Chicago, a coup was staged to get Wallace off the ticket. That day, a Gallup poll was released stating only 2% of Americans wanted Truman on the ticket. 65 wanted Wallace back as VP. Huh. All right, so we'll touch on this really quickly. Going back to, we'll tie this in, we'll thread this in here, and then we'll come back to the thread. You got to have a little bit of ADD to enjoy my stream, I think. They were fucking with Abdel Nasser. Abdel Nasser in Egypt. Sort of a base dude. What's the guy's name? Gamal Abdel Nasser. Handsome looking guy, too. What a look. So he what? He nationalized the oil and the Suez Canal. And that's not going to make the wealthy global multinational dudes happy. They're going to send in the guns. They send in the guns when you piss off global capital. I just need y'all to understand this. That's when they'll send in the guns. That is one of the points at which they send in the guns. They do a coup. They do a regime change. And it's like, you got to see this pattern. You have to start seeing this pattern if you don't already see this, chat. I think a lot of you do. But that's what happened here. I'm not 100% close to the details. I was getting closer to them as I was reading this book, and then I sort of dipped down the book. I haven't read this book in a couple of weeks. It's called JFK versus Alan Dulles. Fight for the fucking Indonesia or something like that. Battle for Indonesia. It's so good. I think it got a little deep on me, and I need to start over from the top, to be honest. It was getting a little deep. But it's all tied together. All this shit's tied together is what I'm getting at. All right, back to the thread. Back to the thread. All right, so I did continue this thread, but I didn't hit the unpause button. I just read this tweet. They were about to call for a vote, and when Wallace was 5 feet away, they made a motion to adjourn, and despite everyone saying no, the motion carried. All of history changed with that moment. If Wallace remained VP and eventually became president, not only would the atomic bombings likely have never happened, but the Cold War could have been avoided, and the 20th century could have truly been a century of the common man. There's so many threads that come out of this that I think reading that, if I read that book again, I'd be able to make a little bit more sense of it right now. But this is like Truman and Eisenhower is when like Alan Dulles was like getting his hands dirty in the fucking CIA, doing clandestine shit all over the world. Makes you truly wonder how much less power they would have had if we would have at one point of our history moved meaningfully in a progressive direction, which just goes to show you again, in the United States, revolutionary time and energy is often wasted on electoralism. This illustrates that again. Why? Because they did to Wallace what they did to Bernie and what they've done to everyone who represents anything that's a threat to global capital. I think that's what's happening here. You got I can't remember what the name of this conference is, but you got Churchill here, FDR, and Stalin with his amazing mustache. What a photograph. Yalta, thank you. And you pulled from this link here saying, in my personal view, I think that Roosevelt was the only person that Stalin did trust. Adds Butler. And I think that they had an understanding of the world. It has nothing to do with the fact that Stalin was a paranoid nut. If Stalin trusted anyone, he trusted Roosevelt, FDR, because Stalin fared very well at the hands of FDR. Okay. Yeah, okay. After World War II, let me read some comments here. World War II, the U.S. put the same brutal Japanese administration in charge of Korea, leading to the Korean War. A few years later, Korea was looking for liberation, and the U.S. was and still is against it. The deep dive I got to go down. Someday, effusive stoicism. That's a separate deep dive for me. Thank you for illuminating that. Oh, you're saying this person said that the Cold War could have been avoided, but it was inevitable. I don't know if I agree, though. This is dawn of industrialization. The ideas had a conflict brewing. One man late in the game could not have stopped it. It was an inevitable result of the world wars and various revolutions throughout the world, not least of which were the independence movements after the fall of the world's monarchies. Independence movements. I wonder which ones you're referring to. Give me an example of one you're referring to. Stalin's the one who insisted that the Allies hold the Nuremberg trials after the war. Is that right? Gonna get this as a tattoo? Yikes. He's got good drip. Yeah. You love to see it. I gotta get back to my thread here, chat. Yeah, Lockwood, I'm just not sure what angle you're coming at this from, and I don't know how we can help each other understand if we're not understanding each other. All right. I try my best to understand, and I got to move on. On Truman's first day in office, a reporter told him, "Good luck, Mr. President." Truman responded, "I wish you didn't have to call me that." Here's a thread about Truman's rise to power, his background, and psychological profile. Check it out. On April 12, 45, months after a grueling trip to Yalta, FDR dies. Truman, his greatest fears realized, becomes president. His presidency is one of the deadliest examples in history of the dangers of incompetent and unstable men in positions of power. Per his diaries, Truman often had nightmares about becoming president. He nearly fainted the moment Eleanor Roosevelt informed him he was now president. In 82 days as VP, Truman met with Roosevelt twice. He wasn't privy to anything regarding foreign policy. He had virtually no accomplishments as a senator before becoming VP. He was not aware of the existence of the Manhattan Project or the atomic bomb until he became president. Yeah. I think when you look into some of those, I'm trying to get an example of one of those quote-unquote independent movements, and you just started talking about something else, and if you would have answered the question, I'm in a place to better understand where you're coming from. So, Lockwood, I'm going to insist you answer that question. Like, what are you referring to? What's your best example of one of those quote-unquote revolutions, independence movements? Honestly, I'm going to insist you answer the question. Truman. Let's read about Truman. Yeah. This picture needs some Colonel Sanders up in there, yeah? Here he is. Born in 84 in Missouri. To a poor Missouri farming family. As a child, he was diagnosed with hyperopia. What's hyperopia? He couldn't fight or play sports. In his diaries, he refers to himself as a sissy, and he was bullied by his peers who called him true woman. That's sexist. What is hyperopia? Everyone be cool in chat. Everyone be cool in chat. Farsightedness. That's it. He's farsighted. All right, whatever. I don't get the connection to the... He needed glasses. That's it. All right. He struggled with his masculinity constantly. His mother often said he was meant to be a girl. He was hyper-focused on his feminine attributes, often expressing his insecurities in letters to his wife. That's actually curious, isn't it? This psychology played into his desperate need to appear strong. I gotta like the tweets that I've read so I can keep track. I'm losing my spot. After service in World War I, he was picked up by the Kansas City Pendergrast machine. What the fuck is that? He was elected to Senate, but shunned by his peers as a hack. He was elected to Senate, right? Another machine secured his re-election. He led an investigation of the defense industry, his only real achievement before becoming VP. An investigation into the defense industry? And what happened? They, like, got him off or what? Throughout his tenure as president, Truman expressed explicit doubt over the safety, morality, and internal implications of using the bomb at least 3 times. However, hardline anti-communists who were shooed away by Roosevelt manipulated Truman to their advantage. Yeah. All right, his most trusted advisor, James Burns, warned Truman that the atomic bomb was great enough to destroy the whole world. Yeah, with the amount of them that we got, yeah. From the beginning, Truman understands that nukes are not just an upgraded weapon, but a potentially omnicidal one. On April 25th, 1945, Secretary of War Stimpson, iDanSimpson, and Brigadier General of the Manhattan Project Groves brief Truman on a bomb capable of wiping out entire cities, which would be ready in 4 months. Truman agrees with them that bomb may be too dangerous to use. Finally, after the Trinity test, he writes in his journal, Dear Diary, we've discovered the most terrible bomb in history. You were looking for it. This may be the fire destruction prophecy of the Euphrates Valley era after Noah and his fabulous ark. Is he an ark theorist? Ren and Stimpy? Ren and Stimpy. Okay. I'm reading about Truman, though. We've contrasted with Henry Wallace. All right, reading on. There were 2 concrete channels to peaceful Japanese defeat being explored by the U.S. and Soviets. One was the renegotiation of U.S. surrender terms. Why did the U.S. refuse to entertain such a compromise? If surrender was inevitable, why didn't Japan give up? The role of the Soviets in influencing Japan's surrender cannot be understated. America's threats against Japan failed to sway the Imperial War Council, who were always primarily concerned with a Soviet invasion and takeover. All right, here's a new thread to go down.
Don't get cheap on me, Dodson.
Just a couple. 3 months after the end of the war in Europe, the Soviets were set to enter the war on the Eastern Front and invade Manchuria. August 9th at midnight was the date set, exactly 3 months after VE Day. On May 16th, the Japanese say a Soviet invasion will deal a death knell, to the empire. Their biggest fear at that point is Stalin, and they shift focus to negotiating with the USSR. Japan was unaware of the agreement for the Soviets to enter the war on the Eastern Front. Japan offered the USSR concessions, everything lost in 1904 to 1905 war, islands and major ports, railroads in Manchuria, parts of Mongolia. On July 3rd and 4th, former PM meets with Soviet ambassador to discuss ending the war. I gotta keep hitting these. Okay. The Japanese are desperate. The U.S. was aware of these negotiations as well. Intercepted Japanese cables claimed unconditional surrender is the only obstacle to peace. If the emperor was retained in a symbolic position only, the war could end tomorrow, quote-unquote tomorrow. Truman explicitly states his knowledge of Japan's desire to surrender in the July 18th cable. Telegram from the Jap emperor asking for peace. Yikes. I don't think you could say that. He knew the Japanese were desperate and willing to surrender if given one concession. So why was surrender not granted? Why? I'm going to do a thing here. Things simultaneously. Trying to do two things. I think I'm reading on here, the role of the Soviets in influencing Japan's surrender cannot be understated. America's threats against Japan failed to sway the Imperial War Council, who were always primarily concerned with a Soviet invasion and takeover. Looks like here's a new thread. Dang, Haley. 3 months after the end of the war in Europe, Soviets were set to enter the war on the Eastern Front and invade Manchuria. August 9th at midnight was the date set, exactly 3 months after VE Day. These photos are incredible. On May 16th, the Japanese say a Soviet invasion will deal a death knell to the empire. We've read this. We've read it. Reading next. Mounting doubt about the bomb and opportunities for peace stood no chance against the American public's bloodlust. The air campaign against Japan was unprecedented in its cruelty, decimating their infrastructure beyond the point of return. Okay. Here we go, another threat. A lesson well learned from the Nazis, America engaged in the systematic persecution and dehumanization of Asians and Japanese Americans to fuel the war effort. While we spared some humanity for the Nazis, Japan was subject to relentless, brutal tactics from the start. That's fascinating. That looks racist. After Pearl Harbor, anti-Japanese racism was at an all-time high. 120,000 Japanese Americans were placed in concentration camps. Extermination sentiment was rampant in the U.S., being compared to rats, monkeys, and vermin. Quote, perhaps the Japs are human. Nothing indicates it. Ugh. Cannot say that. The 42 Bataan Death March was not public knowledge in the U.S. until 1944. The brutal atrocities committed against U.S. and Filipino soldiers ensured that the Japanese were never going to be allowed to surrender without some kind of payback. Uh-oh. Truman was deeply racist and anti-Semitic. In a letter to his wife, he states, I think one man is as good as another so long as he is decent and honest, and not a N-word or Chinaman. Quote, the Lord made the white men from dust, the N-word from mud, and then threw up what was left, and it came out of a Chinaman. My gosh, dudes. President. Unlike in Europe, where the U.S. took great care to avoid bombing civilians until late in the war, the Asian strategic bombing policy from the outset was urban in an indiscriminate bombing. The U.S. aimed to incinerate all of Japan's paper cities. Yikes. Gosh. This is bleak. When the head of U.S. bombing, Major General Hansel, refused to start bombing civilians, was replaced by General Curtis LeMay, who led the firebombing of Tokyo. The destruction was unprecedented. I don't know about this. And the stench of burnt flesh was so strong that pilots were vomiting in the planes. I don't know about this, chat. I hope I'm okay with this. The U.S. firebombed over 100 Japanese cities. The firebombing of Tokyo remains the deadliest air campaign in history. The city of Toyama was 99.5% destroyed. By summer of 45, the U.S. ran out of important military targets, began targeting secondary, unimportant military targets. Quote-unquote military targets. Physicist Freeman Dyson, quote, "I found this continued slaughter of defenseless Japanese more sickening than the slaughter of well-defended Germans, but still I didn't quit. By that time, I had been at war so long I couldn't remember peace." No living poet had words to describe that emptiness of the soul that allowed me to go on killing without remorse. But Shakespeare understood it and gave Macbeth the words, "I am in blood, steeped in so that, should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as going o'er." Thing I can't really show you are some images because they're TOS on Twitch. Some aren't TOS on Twitch, but they're not on YouTube. But what are you going to do? Here are drawings by survivors of the bombings. Oh, man. Reading on in Haley's thread, there are scores of testimonials from high-ranking U.S. military scientists and politicians advocating against the use of the bomb long before and immediately after it was used. These accounts have been largely buried by history. An interim committee chaired by Stimpson, iDanSimpson, and heavily influenced by Burns was established to come to a final decision about how to use the bomb. Oppenheimer warned within 3 years bombs would be up to 7,000 times more powerful than Fat Man, the bomb they dropped, right? Between 10 and 100 megatons. Ali Problemas, love your face. Thank you so much. Everyone give out Problemas a follow. You're going to love this content. You might catch a DJ set. Hopefully you find yourself checking out their original awesome music. Problemas, love your face. Welcome in. Make sure y'all check out my chat with Ali, with Problemas. Ali and I had a nice little chat on my show, Leftist and Chill. Welcome in. What's up? We're talking today about today's main character on Twitter and a little bit of World War II, nuclear bomb, Cold War type education here today. And welcome in. Oppenheimer's speech, let me grab that. Manhattan Project scientists began to staunchly publicly oppose the use of the bomb, stating it would cite an uncontrollable arms race between the U.S. and the USSR that would lead to total mutual annihilation. Yeah. I think that's what's going on here. We just haven't quite yet done the final deed. We're 100 seconds to midnight. 7 out of the 8 5-star generals at the time pressured Truman against using the bomb. Wow. Admiral William F. Leahy, Chief of Staff, described the bomb as a violation of every Christian ethic and all the laws of war. Also from Leahy, the use of the barbarous weapons at Hiroshima and Nagasaki was of no material use in the war against Japan. I was not taught to make war in that fashion. Wars cannot be won by destroying women and children. Supreme Commander Eisenhower was against using the bomb on 2 grounds. The Japanese were ready to surrender. They're ready to surrender, and it wasn't necessary to hit them with that awful thing. Second, I hated to see our country be the first to use such a weapon. Oh, we're that evil. I think that's what they hate to see. They hate to see the truth. Supreme Commander MacArthur, who frequently advocated for nuking Korea, described the use of the atomic bombs on Japan as an outrage. Wow. He was confident that as early as May 45, the Japanese would gladly accept the revised surrender terms Hoover had urged Truman about. Former President Hoover wrote a memo in May 45 urging Truman to find another way to end the war by altering surrender terms. MacArthur called it a wise and statesman-like document which, if enacted, would have obviated the slaughter at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just a couple dudes vibing. Not a cell phone in sight. Dozens of high-ranking admirals openly stated that the Japanese were ready to surrender. Chester Nimitz, second-in-command of the Navy, stated in October 45 that the Japanese had already sued for peace before the atomic age was announced, before Hiroshima and before the Russians. Here he is, practicing marksmanship. Brigadier General Carter Clark said, "We brought them down to an abject surrender through accelerated sinking of their merchant marines and hunger alone. We didn't need to do it. We knew we didn't need to do it, and we knew we didn't need to do it. And they knew we didn't need to do it. Yeah. We used them as an experiment." The War Department later issued a memo claiming there was little discussion of the U.S. bomb in the Japanese cabinet. To Japanese leaders, there was little difference between the fire bombings and the nuclear bombings. They accepted that the U.S. could continue to wipe out their cities. Well, some of the most respected U.S. generals in history overwhelmingly came out against the bomb, and the nuclear threats failed to carry any weight in the Imperial War Council. The decisive factor in Japan's surrender was always the Soviets. So what changed? April 11th and July 6th, internal JSC memo state that Soviet entry into the war will convince all Japanese that further resistance is futile. Cue up Star Wars meme. Truman was aware of all of this. Truman wrote in his diary, "Dear Diary, Stalin will enter the war by August 15th. Japs, I know, it's bad. Japs finished when that occurs." He later wrote to his wife, "The Russians are coming in. We'll end the war a year sooner now. Think of all the boys that won't be killed." Reading on. The beginning of the Cold War. Why the U.S. leveled Hiroshima and Nagasaki, despite all evidence, both military and scientific, in the presence of peaceful and concrete alternatives, in the sight of God and all the moral men in the world. Thank you, Ira. Happy 2 years. Thank you. Welcome in. Love your face. All right. Next thread. Truman, a troubled man. Insecure leader with deeply racist tendencies. However, is not evil in the same way Hitler was. So why, amid so much doubt and against the urging of his conscience, did he still decide to go ahead and drop the bomb? He's a dick. I don't like him. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were intended not to be the last acts of World War II, but rather the first acts of the Cold War. That's been the prevailing argument and what I think I'm picking up on. The bombs were detonated over Japan, but the true target was the Soviet Union. Well, then they missed. Idiots. Am I right? Wait, I get analogies, metaphors. I get it. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that board set. That's a not now thing. Okay. In Roosevelt's final letter to Truman, he urged caution with the Soviets and implored him to maintain peace. Upon entering office, at the insistence of his staunchly anti-communist advisors, Truman began treating the Soviets as an enemy. I wonder which ones. At Potsdam, Truman received word of the successful Trinity test. Churchill remarks that his demeanor changed entirely. It became a trump card and gave him the confidence to begin to play above the rules. He then began to consider the use of the bomb to threaten the Soviets. Okay. No one in the Japanese war cabinet changed their minds based on the events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Soviet invasion was the only thing that mattered. It undermined the Kitsugo strategy of inviting an American invasion to inflict casualties to leverage better peace terms. Okay, and of course, upon Soviet invasion, the peace talks that were starting to take shape would be null and void. The Soviet invasion begins at midnight on August 8th. Japanese cable. What we feared has finally happened. The Soviet invasion means we're forced to surrender. The Kremlin interpreted the bomb as a direct assault on the USSR. Stalin, Zhukov, and others knew it was an act of imperialism and war. After the USSR suffered 27 million casualties in World War II, they were enraged that another war had immediately begun and their efforts were in vain. Okay. All right, maybe to wrap this clip up here.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita.
This guy's seen some shit.
Vishnu.
Hey, guys.
Is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Holy shit. Whoa. Chilling. Yeah. All right. So, this whole thing, chat, this whole thing is just based off this one tweet. We did a whole big, huge deep dive because of this really bad take. Baby, if that ain't the definition of lemons to lemonade, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? You take shit and you make it into a, I don't know, something you would eat. Something that's not shitty. All right. So with that said, thank you, Twitter's main character of the day, Matthew Chapman. Chat, replay viewers, I don't want to hear anything about dogpiling having to do with my video. You're not allowed to do that. Do not go attack Matthew Chapman. But drag the take, that's for sure. Bad take. That's what I'm going to say about that. If you're watching my YouTube replay, thank you for watching. Hit that button, that like button. Bing! All right, and subscribe. Hit the bell. And join us over here. I talk with my chat right here. We talk about ideas and stuff. And high-level ideas. And come on and join us. We do this pretty much every day. Twitch.tv/iDanSimpson. Please support on Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons. Love your face.